I stared at the legal documents spread across my attorney's mahogany desk, my hands trembling as I read the accusations printed in bold black letters. My own parents were suing me for $200,000, claiming I had stolen the future that rightfully belonged to my brother Tyler. According to their lawsuit, my six-figure business, my house, my paid-off student loans, everything I had worked 80-hour weeks to achieve since I was 16 was built on opportunities I had somehow fraudulently taken from my golden child brother. The irony burned like acid in my throat. These same parents had never given me a single dollar, while Tyler had received everything and gambled it all away. Growing up in suburban Cleveland, I learned early that love in my family came with conditions. Tyler, 3 years older than me, could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. When he brought home a report card full of D's, Dad would pat his shoulder and say he was just finding his path. When I brought home straight A's, Mom would remind me that grades weren't everything and that Tyler had more natural charisma. At 16, I started my first real business venture. Mrs. Patterson next door had complained about her overgrown lawn, so I borrowed our neighbor's ancient push mower and offered to cut it for $15. She was so impressed with my work that she recommended me to 3 other neighbors. Within 2 weeks, I was making $60 every Saturday morning. My parents watched my little lawn care operation with amused tolerance. "It's nice that James has a hobby," Mom would tell her friends over coffee. Meanwhile, Tyler was spending his weekends at parties, coming home drunk, and getting lectures that always ended with Dad slipping him $20 for gas money. I reinvested every penny I made. By 17, I had saved enough to buy my own mower, edger, and leaf blower. I was maintaining 12 lawns every weekend and had expanded into snow removal during Cleveland's brutal winters. My bank account grew steadily, while my parents praised Tyler for getting accepted to State University, even though his SAT scores were mediocre and his GPA barely qualified him for admission. The real shock came during my senior year when I applied for scholarships and financial aid. I spent countless hours crafting essays documenting my business experience and highlighting my academic achievements. Tyler, meanwhile, partied his way through his freshman year of college, changing majors 3 times and barely maintaining the minimum GPA to avoid academic probation. One evening in March, I overheard my parents talking in hushed tones about Tyler's tuition costs. Curious, I checked the mail the next day when they weren't home. Hidden between credit card offers and grocery store flyers, I found bank statements that made my blood run cold. Over the past year, my parents had transferred $30,000 to Tyler's checking account. The memo lines read, "Business startup funds, investment capital, and entrepreneurial support." $30,000, more than I had saved in 2 years of backbreaking work. That night at dinner, I confronted them. "You told me there was no money for my college expenses. You said I needed to figure it out on my own." Dad set down his fork and fixed me with a stern look. "Tyler is exploring his options. He has big ideas." "What ideas?" I pressed. "He's failed every class except Intro to Communications." Mom's face flushed with anger. "Your brother is going through a difficult transition. He needs our support." "And I don't—" "You're different, James," she said, as if that explained everything. "You've always been self-sufficient. Tyler needs more guidance." I spent that night lying awake, staring at my ceiling, and processing the truth that had been staring me in the face for years. My parents had written me off as the responsible one who didn't need help while pouring money and attention into Tyler's endless potential. They weren't investing in his future. They were enabling his failures. The next morning, I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. I packed my clothes, my business equipment, and my savings into my beat-up Honda Civic and moved into a tiny studio apartment across town. My parents didn't try to stop me. In fact, they seemed relieved. Now they could focus entirely on Tyler without the uncomfortable reminder of what actual success looked like. My apartment was 400 square feet of stained carpet and leaky faucets, but it was mine. I had $4,000 in my checking account, a high school diploma, and a burning determination to prove that I didn't need anyone's help to succeed. Living alone at 18 was harder than I had imagined. My studio apartment had a kitchenette the size of a closet and a bathroom where I could touch both walls while sitting on the toilet. The rent was $600 a month, which seemed manageable until I factored in utilities, groceries, and gas for my car. I was spending almost every dollar I earned just to survive. My lawn care business sustained me through the summer, but I knew it wasn't scalable. I couldn't mow lawns when it snowed, and I certainly couldn't build a future on seasonal work that destroyed my body. I needed something that could grow beyond the limitations of physical labor. That's when I discovered digital marketing. A client mentioned that his restaurant was struggling to get customers through the door despite having great food. I offered to help him create a Facebook page and manage his online presence for $50 a month. Within 6 weeks, his weekend reservations had doubled. Word spread quickly through Cleveland's tight-knit small business community. I spent my nights teaching myself everything I could about social media advertising, search engine optimization, and content creation. YouTube became my university. I watched tutorials until my eyes burned, took notes in cheap spiral notebooks, and practiced on my own experimental websites. While other kids my age were partying or sleeping, I was learning skills that most business schools didn't even teach yet. By winter, I had landed my first major contract, a local restaurant chain with 4 locations. The owner, Mr. Rodriguez, had been impressed with my work for his friend's pizza shop. He offered me $50,000 to completely overhaul their digital presence, create targeted advertising campaigns, and develop a customer retention system. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. I was 3 weeks into the project when Tyler showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't spoken to him or my parents since moving out 6 months earlier. He looked terrible. Bloodshot eyes, wrinkled clothes, and the pale complexion of someone who spent too much time indoors drinking cheap beer. "James," he said, shifting awkwardly in my doorway. "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let him in. He looked around my sparse apartment with what seemed like genuine surprise. "This is where you've been living." "It's temporary," I said defensively. "I heard about your business. That's really cool, man. I'm proud of you." The words caught me off guard. Tyler had never expressed pride in anything I'd done. For a moment, I felt the familiar longing for family connection that I thought I had buried. We talked for 2 hours. He apologized for the way our parents had treated me. He admitted that he had wasted the money they gave him on stupid investments and party expenses. He seemed genuinely interested in what I was doing, asking detailed questions about my marketing strategies and client relationships. For the first time in our lives, we were talking like equals. Before he left, I made a mistake that would nearly destroy everything I had built. I told him about the Rodriguez contract. I explained my strategy, showed him the proposal documents, and even gave him access to my project management system so he could see how I organized client work. I thought I was finally connecting with my brother. 2 days later, Mr. Rodriguez called me in a panic. Someone had contacted him claiming that I was inexperienced and using questionable tactics. They had provided detailed information about my project timeline, my pricing structure, and my client list. They even knew about a minor delay I had encountered while waiting for graphic design approvals. "I'm sorry, James," Mr. Rodriguez said over the phone. "I can't take the risk. I'm canceling the contract." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. $50,000 vanished in a single phone call. Worse, I had already invested $12,000 in market research, content creation, and advertising materials specifically for his restaurants. Money I didn't have. Money I had borrowed against the anticipated contract payment. I spent the next week trying to trace the source of the anonymous tip. My limited technical skills weren't enough to identify the person who had contacted Mr. Rodriguez, but I had strong suspicions. Tyler was the only person who knew the intimate details of my project. He was also the only person who would benefit from my failure. My suspicions were confirmed when I discovered fake negative reviews for my business posted across multiple platforms. The reviews all came from newly created accounts, and they all contained specific details that only Tyler knew about my work process. When I traced the IP addresses through a basic online tool, they all led back to the public library computer lab that Tyler frequented. My credit cards were maxed out. My rent was 3 weeks overdue. My car was making ominous grinding noises that I couldn't afford to fix. I had $16 in my checking account, and no prospect of replacing the income I had lost. For the first time since moving out, I considered calling my parents and admitting defeat. Instead, I sold my television, my gaming console, and every piece of furniture except my desk and mattress. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for every meal and walked to client meetings to save gas money. I was 20 years old, living in poverty, and completely alone. But I refused to give up. Rock bottom taught me lessons that prosperity never could. With no safety net and no family support, I learned to be resourceful in ways I had never imagined. I offered my services to small business owners in exchange for testimonials and referrals. I worked for free just to build a portfolio that could convince paying clients to take a chance on me. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source: social media management for local service businesses. While most marketing companies focused on big corporate clients, I discovered that small business owners were desperately trying to figure out Facebook and Instagram, but had no idea how to use them effectively. I developed a simple but powerful system. For $300 a month, I would manage a business's entire social media presence, daily posts, customer interactions, targeted advertising, and monthly analytics reports. My clients didn't need to understand the technology. They just needed to see results. The results were immediate and impressive. A local plumber's customer calls increased by 40% within 2 months. A hair salon filled up their appointment book for the first time in 3 years. A auto repair shop started getting customers from 3 neighboring towns instead of just their immediate area. Word spread through Cleveland's small business community like wildfire. Within 6 months, I had signed 15 clients. Within a year, I was managing social media for 37 businesses and grossing $8,000 per month. I hired my first employee, Sarah, a recent college graduate who understood social media trends better than most people twice her age. My personal life improved dramatically, along with my business success. I moved into a better apartment, bought reliable clothes, and even started saving money for something I had never dared to imagine: buying a house. The house hunting process felt surreal. Real estate agents were surprised when a 20-year-old walked into their offices asking to see properties in good neighborhoods. But my credit score was excellent, my business income was documented and growing, and I had saved enough for a substantial down payment. I found my dream home in a quiet neighborhood 15 minutes from downtown Cleveland, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a 2-car garage, updated kitchen, and a backyard perfect for a home office. The asking price was $135,000, exactly within my budget. On the day I signed the mortgage papers, I felt a surge of pride that I had never experienced before. I was 20 years old, and I owned a house. I had built a successful business from nothing. I had paid off my student loans and had money in the bank. Everything my parents said I couldn't do without their help, I had accomplished completely on my own. That evening, as I sat in my empty living room surrounded by moving boxes, my phone rang. It was my mother. "We heard you bought a house," she said without preamble. "News travels fast," I replied. "Tyler is going through a difficult time right now. His food truck business failed, and he's lost a lot of money." I waited for her to continue, already knowing where this conversation was heading. "We think it would be good for both of you if he came to work with you. You could teach him about your business, and he could help you grow." He sabotaged my biggest contract, I said flatly. That's ridiculous, James. Tyler would never do something like that. I have proof. You've always been jealous of your brother. This is just another example of you trying to tear him down. The familiar patterns were emerging. No matter what Tyler did, no matter how much evidence existed of his failures or betrayals, my parents would always defend him and blame me. He's family, Mom continued. You have an obligation to help him. My obligation is to my clients and my employees. I'm not running a charity. Don't be so selfish, James. You've been blessed with success. The least you can do is share some of it with your brother. I hung up without saying goodbye, but the conversation left me deeply unsettled. Something in my mother's tone suggested that this wasn't a request. It was the beginning of a campaign. They weren't going to accept my refusal and move on. They were going to escalate. 3 days later, my father appeared at my office. He had never visited my workplace before, had never shown any interest in my business, and had never acknowledged my success. His presence felt ominous. "Impressive setup," he said, looking around at my small but professional office space. Sarah looked up from her computer with curiosity and concern. "What do you want, Dad?" "I want to talk about family loyalty, about doing right by the people who raised you. The people who raised me told me I was on my own when I turned 18. We're not asking for charity, James. We're offering Tyler a chance to contribute to something successful. He has ideas that could help your business grow." "What ideas?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Business development ideas, marketing strategies, partnership opportunities. Such as, he's been working on a comprehensive plan for expanding your services. He thinks you could be doing much more than you're currently doing." I almost laughed. Tyler had never held a job for more than 6 months. His food truck business had failed within 8 weeks. His previous ventures included a failed eBay reselling operation, a brief attempt at day trading that lost $3,000, and a multi-level marketing scheme that alienated half his college friends. "I'm not interested," I said firmly. Dad's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, son. Family is all you really have in this world. Someday you're going to need us, and we're not going to be there if you don't start showing some loyalty now. Is that a threat?" "It's reality. Business is unpredictable. Clients come and go, but family is permanent, unless you choose to throw it away." After he left, Sarah approached my desk with obvious concern. "Everything okay?" "Family drama," I said, trying to sound dismissive. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. My parents had never fought this hard for anything in their lives. They weren't just asking for help for Tyler. They were demanding it. And when people who have never respected your boundaries suddenly start making demands, it usually means they're planning to take what they want by force. My business continued growing at a pace that surprised even me. What had started as a desperate attempt to survive had evolved into something bigger than I had ever imagined. By my 21st birthday, I was managing social media for 68 businesses across 3 states. My team had grown to include Sarah, 2 part-time content creators, and a client relations manager named Marcus. The success felt surreal. I was making more money than my parents had ever earned, managing a team of employees and getting featured in local business publications. Cleveland's Chamber of Commerce invited me to speak at their Young Entrepreneurs panel. The local newspaper ran a profile piece about my journey from high school lawn care to digital marketing success. But success brought new challenges I hadn't anticipated. Managing multiple states required more sophisticated systems, better technology, and stronger legal protections. I incorporated my business as Rodriguez Digital Solutions, LLC, established proper contracts with all clients, and hired an accountant to handle the increasingly complex financial requirements. The most significant milestone came when I decided to buy a larger house. My 3-bedroom ranch had served its purpose, but I needed space for a proper home office storage for business equipment and room to host client meetings. I found a beautiful 2-story colonial in one of Cleveland's most desirable neighborhoods. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a finished basement, and a 2-car garage with workshop space. The mortgage application process was more complex this time. Banks wanted detailed business financial records, tax returns, and proof of consistent income. But my documentation was thorough, my credit score was excellent, and my business showed steady growth every quarter. I qualified for the loan easily. On the day I moved into my new house, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment that went beyond material success. I had proven to myself that I could build something meaningful without anyone's help. Every room represented hours of work. Every piece of furniture was purchased with money I had earned myself. But my family situation was deteriorating rapidly. Tyler's latest venture, an ambitious food truck concept called Fusion Street Eats, had been a spectacular failure. He had borrowed $40,000 from my parents to buy and outfit a used truck, develop a menu, and secure permits for operation. The business lasted exactly 6 weeks before health department violations, unpaid vendor bills, and Tyler's complete lack of business discipline forced it to close. My parents were devastated. $40,000 represented a significant portion of their retirement savings. Dad had taken a second mortgage on their house to help fund Tyler's dream. Mom had borrowed against her life insurance policy. They were both nearing retirement age with insufficient savings and mounting debt. Instead of holding Tyler accountable for the financial disaster, they began focusing their anger on me. Phone calls became increasingly hostile. They accused me of being selfish for not helping Tyler when his business was struggling. They questioned why I deserved success when Tyler, who they claimed was more naturally gifted, continued to fail. The situation reached a breaking point when Tyler attempted to steal my business identity. I discovered the fraud by accident when a potential client mentioned that someone had already contacted them using my company name and offering services at rates far below my standard pricing. Further investigation revealed that Tyler had created fake business cards, a fraudulent website, and social media profiles using my company name. He was scheduling meetings with my potential clients, offering cut-rate services, and taking deposits for work he had no intention or ability to complete. When clients tried to follow up, they couldn't reach him, which damaged my business reputation. The identity theft went deeper than I initially realized. Tyler had used my personal information to open business credit cards, apply for small business loans, and even sign office lease agreements. He had been systematically stealing my identity for months, using his access to family information and his knowledge of my business operations to convince lenders and clients that he was authorized to act on my behalf. I discovered the full extent of the fraud when my accountant called to ask about several $1,000s in business expenses that didn't match my records. Tyler had been charging business purchases to credit cards opened in my company's name. Equipment rentals, marketing materials, even personal expenses like restaurant meals and clothing purchases. When I confronted my parents about Tyler's criminal behavior, they defended him with the same illogical loyalty they had always shown. "He's desperate," Mom explained, as if desperation justified fraud. "He's just trying to build something like you did." "He's stealing from me," I said. "He's your brother. You should be helping him, not making his life harder." "I'm not making his life harder. He's doing that all by himself." Dad intervened with a tone I had never heard before. "You listen to me, James. Tyler made some mistakes, but he's family. You turn him into the police and you'll regret it for the rest of your life." "Is that another threat?" "It's a promise. You destroy Tyler and we'll destroy you." I hung up and immediately called the police. Tyler had committed multiple felonies: identity theft, credit fraud, and business impersonation. I had documentation proving every crime. The detective assigned to my case was sympathetic, but warned me that prosecuting family members often created long-term complications that went beyond the legal system. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Detective Morrison asked. "Once we arrest him, there's no going back." I thought about Tyler's fake business cards, the money he had stolen, the clients he had confused and alienated. I thought about my parents' threats and their refusal to hold him accountable for anything he did. "I'm sure," I said. Tyler was arrested 3 days later. The charges included identity theft, credit fraud, forgery, and operating a business without proper licensing. The local media covered the story as an example of white-collar crime within families. My business name appeared in several news articles, but the coverage actually helped my reputation by clearly identifying me as the victim rather than the perpetrator. My parents' reaction was swift and vicious. They blamed me completely for Tyler's arrest. They accused me of being vindictive, jealous, and cruel. They called my clients and employees, trying to convince them that I was unstable and vindictive. They even showed up at my house demanding that I drop the charges and take responsibility for Tyler's legal fees. When I refused, they made good on their threat to destroy me. But they chose a method I had never anticipated, one that would test everything I had built and everything I believed about justice. 3 months after Tyler's arrest, I received a certified letter that changed everything. My parents had hired a lawyer and filed a civil lawsuit against me, claiming that my business success legally belonged to Tyler and demanding half of everything I owned. The lawsuit was 23 pages of the most twisted logic I had ever encountered. According to their attorney, Tyler had developed the core concepts for my business during his college years as part of an entrepreneurship class project. They claimed that I had stolen his ideas, used family connections to gain clients, and built my success on intellectual property that rightfully belonged to Tyler. The specific demands were staggering. They wanted 50% of my business assets, 50% of my house value, half of my savings accounts, and 50% of all future business income for the next 10 years. They also demanded that I pay Tyler's legal fees for the criminal case and provide him with a management position in my company. But the most shocking aspect of the lawsuit was the character assassination it contained. The documents portrayed me as a manipulative sociopath who had systematically destroyed Tyler's opportunities while building my own success on stolen foundations. They claimed that I had convinced my parents to fund Tyler's failures while secretly sabotaging his efforts to succeed. According to their version of events, Tyler's food truck business had failed because I had spread negative rumors about his food quality. His previous ventures had collapsed because I had interfered with his supplier relationships and poisoned potential investors against him. Even his academic struggles were attributed to my psychological manipulation and sabotage. The lawsuit included sworn statements from my parents describing me as jealous, vindictive, and emotionally unstable. They claimed that Tyler had always been the more creative and business-minded brother, but that I had used manipulation and family politics to undermine his confidence and steal his opportunities. Reading their description of me was like looking in a funhouse mirror. Every positive trait was reframed as a character flaw. My work ethic became obsessive behavior. My financial success became exploitation of family resources. My independence became callous disregard for family loyalty. The local media picked up the story with obvious relish. Family feud turns legal. Brother sues, brother over business success. The coverage was sensationalized and one-sided, focusing on my parents' claims without investigating the underlying facts. Several clients called to express concern about the negative publicity. 2 clients canceled their contracts entirely, citing concerns about being associated with someone involved in family litigation. My attorney, David Kellerman, was a straight-talking corporate lawyer who specialized in small business protection. He read through the lawsuit with obvious disgust. "This is one of the most frivolous cases I've seen in 20 years of practice," he said. "But frivolous doesn't mean harmless. They're trying to destroy your reputation and force you into a settlement. What are my options? We can fight it, but litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Even winning costs money, and the negative publicity could damage your business. Alternatively, you could offer a small settlement just to make them go away." I'm not giving them $1, I said firmly. David nodded with approval. Good, because settling would just encourage them to come back for more later. We're going to fight this and we're going to win decisively. But fighting meant months of depositions, document production, and legal fees. It meant having my business practices examined under a microscope. It meant defending myself against accusations that were designed to be impossible to disprove completely. The stress was overwhelming. I was 22 years old, running a growing business, managing employees who depended on me for their livelihoods, and defending myself against a lawsuit filed by my own parents. I wasn't sleeping well. I was losing weight. I found myself questioning decisions that I had made with complete confidence just months earlier. The worst part was the isolation. Friends and extended family members didn't know how to respond to the situation. Some thought I should settle just to preserve family relationships. Others thought my parents were completely unreasonable, but didn't want to get involved. I felt like I was fighting the battle completely alone. My business started showing signs of strain. I was distracted during client meetings. I was making minor errors in campaign management that I had never made before. Sarah and Marcus were covering for me as much as possible, but they couldn't hide the fact that the lawsuit was affecting my performance. 2 months into the litigation process, my parents escalated their tactics. They began contacting my clients directly, suggesting that my business practices were unethical and that I was using their lawsuit to generate sympathy and avoid accountability for professional mistakes. They created fake online reviews for my business, posted negative comments on my social media pages, and even showed up at networking events to spread rumors about my character. The harassment campaign was systematic and relentless. They were trying to destroy my business by undermining client confidence and damaging my professional reputation. Every lie they told contained just enough truth to seem plausible. Every accusation was designed to plant seeds of doubt that would be difficult to completely dispel. For the first time since starting my business, I began to question whether success was worth this kind of personal cost. Maybe I should have just given Tyler a job when they first asked. Maybe I should have settled the lawsuit and accepted the financial loss. Maybe trying to hold my family accountable for their actions was more trouble than it was worth. But then I remembered something Tyler had said during one of our few honest conversations. He had admitted that he had never actually wanted to work in marketing or digital media. He had told me that business ownership seemed like too much stress and responsibility. He had confessed that he preferred the idea of being successful without having to do the actual work that success required. My parents weren't fighting for Tyler's right to succeed. They were fighting for his right to benefit from my success without contributing anything to it. They wanted me to subsidize his failures and share my achievements with someone who had actively tried to sabotage them. That realization gave me the clarity I needed to fight back with everything I had. This wasn't just about money or business ownership. It was about whether people could steal what others had built through lies, manipulation, and legal harassment. It was about whether family relationships gave anyone the right to destroy another person's life and livelihood. I decided to stop playing defense and start playing offense. If my parents wanted a war, I would give them one they would never forget. My legal team's investigation into my parents' claims revealed layers of deception that went far beyond what I had imagined. David Kellerman hired a private investigator, a former police detective named Carol Martinez, who specialized in family fraud cases. What she discovered completely destroyed my parents' credibility and revealed the true scope of their dishonesty. Tyler's supposed business plan that formed the foundation of their lawsuit was a complete fabrication. Carol traced the document to a business school template that had been available online for over 5 years. Tyler had literally copied and pasted sections from a generic marketing strategy guide, changing only the company names and contact information. The original ideas that I had allegedly stolen were actually standard industry practices that any first-year business student would recognize. But the document fraud was just the beginning. Carol's investigation revealed that my parents had perjured themselves in multiple sworn statements. They claimed that Tyler had never received financial support from them, but bank records showed over $100,000 in transfers over 3 years. They swore that Tyler's businesses had failed due to my interference, but business registration records showed that most of his ventures had never been properly licensed or legally established. The most damaging discovery was a series of recorded phone conversations that revealed the true motivation behind the lawsuit. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state, which meant that I could legally record phone calls as long as I was a participant. David had advised me to document all interactions with my parents once the litigation began. In one conversation, my mother explicitly admitted that they were suing me because they needed money to replace what Tyler had lost. "James has more than he needs," she said. "He should be helping his family instead of hoarding everything for himself." In another call, my father discussed strategy with Tyler, talking about how to pressure James into settling and make him pay for what he's put this family through. Most shocking was a conversation where Tyler and my father discussed my identity theft case. Tyler complained that I had overreacted to his borrowing my business name, and my father suggested that the criminal charges were evidence of my vindictive personality that could be used in the civil lawsuit. The recordings proved that the lawsuit was never about protecting Tyler's intellectual property rights. It was a coordinated attempt to extort money from me by using the legal system as a weapon. They had filed false claims, submitted fabricated evidence, and committed perjury in sworn statements. David filed a comprehensive countersuit that included claims for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, malicious prosecution, and abuse of process. We demanded compensation for my legal fees, damages for lost business income, and punitive damages for their fraudulent conduct. But David's most brilliant strategy was requesting sanctions against my parents' attorney for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Legal sanctions could result in the lawyer being fined, reprimanded, or even losing their license to practice law. Most attorneys are extremely careful to avoid sanctions, which meant that our request would force their lawyer to either abandon the case or risk serious professional consequences. The turning point came during Tyler's deposition. Under oath and facing potential perjury charges, he broke down completely. He admitted that he had never developed any original business ideas. He confessed that he had been jealous of my success and had tried to sabotage my business relationships. He acknowledged that the identity theft was intentional and calculated, not a desperate mistake, as my parents had claimed. Most importantly, Tyler admitted that he had never wanted to be a business owner. "I just wanted the money without having to do all the work," he said during his deposition. "James makes it look easy, but I don't want to work 80-hour weeks and deal with employees and clients and all that stress. I just thought he should share some of what he made with family." Tyler's honesty was devastating to my parents' case, but it was also oddly liberating. For the first time in our lives, he was telling the complete truth about our relationship and his motivations. He wasn't a victim of my success. He was someone who wanted the benefits of achievement without the effort required to earn them. My parents' attorney withdrew from the case 2 weeks after Tyler's deposition. Professional legal ethics prevented him from continuing to represent clients who had clearly lied to him and submitted false evidence to the court. Sanctions were still possible, but the immediate threat of professional consequences was enough to convince him to abandon the case. Left without legal representation, my parents tried to represent themselves in court. The hearing was a disaster. Judge Patricia Williams had clearly read all the evidence and was not impressed with their arguments. When my mother tried to explain why Tyler deserved half my business assets, the judge interrupted her. "Ma'am, do you understand that your son has been criminally convicted of stealing this young man's identity and defrauding his business?" "Yes, but that's not the real issue here," Mom replied. "What is the real issue?" James has always been jealous of Tyler's natural abilities. He's used manipulation and family politics to undermine Tyler's confidence and steal opportunities that should have gone to Tyler. Judge Williams stared at her in obvious disbelief. You're asking this court to award damages to someone who committed identity theft against the plaintiff. We're asking for what's fair. Family should help each other. Family members should also refrain from stealing each other's identities and filing fraudulent lawsuits. The judge dismissed their case with prejudice, which meant they could never file the same claims again. She also awarded me full legal fees and additional damages for the harassment and business interference. The total award was $70,000, more than enough to cover my legal costs and compensate me for the income I had lost during the litigation. But the most satisfying moment came when Judge Williams addressed my parents directly. I've been on this bench for 15 years, and I have never seen a more frivolous and malicious abuse of the legal system. You should be ashamed of yourselves for trying to profit from your son's hard work and success. This court hopes you will take this opportunity to reflect on your priorities and your treatment of your family members. As we left the courthouse, David was practically beaming. That was a complete vindication, he said. They'll never be able to challenge your business ownership again. I felt a complex mixture of relief, satisfaction, and sadness. I had won decisively, but the victory had come at the cost of permanently severing my relationship with my parents. They would never forgive me for exposing their lies and defeating their lawsuit. I would probably never see them again. The months following the lawsuit victory were transformative in ways I hadn't expected. Winning in court had validated everything I had built and proven that justice could prevail over manipulation and lies. But the real changes went deeper than legal vindication. My business exploded with new growth. The media coverage of the lawsuit had initially seemed like a threat, but it ultimately became the best marketing I could have asked for. Local business owners were impressed that a young entrepreneur had successfully defended himself against family harassment and fraudulent legal claims. They saw me as someone who had integrity and the courage to fight for what was right, even when it was personally costly. Within 6 months of the court decision, I had signed 43 new clients across 4 states. My team grew to include 8 full-time employees and a network of freelance specialists. We moved into a proper office building with conference rooms, dedicated workspaces for each team member, and room for continued expansion. The financial success was gratifying, but the personal growth was even more meaningful. Fighting the lawsuit had forced me to articulate my values, defend my decisions, and stand up for principles that I had previously taken for granted. I learned that success without integrity is meaningless, but success defended with courage becomes something powerful and lasting. 6 months after the court victory, Tyler reached out to me for the first time since his arrest. He called my office and asked if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant but curious about what he might want to say. We met at a quiet cafe near downtown Cleveland. Tyler looked different, healthier, more focused, less of the desperate energy that had characterized him during his worst periods. He had been working as a line cook at a local restaurant, living in a small apartment, and attending counseling sessions as part of his probation requirements. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "A real one, not like the fake apologies I used to give when I got caught doing something stupid." I waited for him to continue. "I was jealous of you for our entire childhood. You made everything look easy and I could never figure out how you did it. I thought you were just naturally better at everything, and that made me feel like a failure." "You weren't a failure, Tyler. You just had different interests." "No, that's not true. I didn't have interests at all. I had fantasies about being successful without wanting to do any of the work that success requires. I wanted to be you without becoming you, if that makes sense." It did make sense. Tyler had wanted the results of dedication and hard work without the dedication and hard work themselves. "Mom and Dad made it worse," he continued. They kept telling me I had unlimited potential, but they never helped me develop any actual skills. They just gave me money and told me everything would work out eventually. They meant well. I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Maybe. Or maybe they were just afraid to tell me the truth about myself. Either way, they enabled me to avoid reality for way too long. Tyler's honesty was refreshing, but I remained cautious. He had been manipulative for so long that I couldn't be sure this wasn't another attempt to gain something from me. "I'm not asking for anything," he said, as if he could read my thoughts. "I'm not asking for a job or money or a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm sorry for all of it." "What about Mom and Dad?" Tyler's expression darkened. "They're still convinced that you're the villain in this story. They think the court was wrong, the judge was biased, and you somehow manipulated the entire legal system to get revenge on our family. Do you believe that?" "No. I know exactly what I did, and I know exactly what they did. You were the only one telling the truth through this entire mess." We talked for another hour. Tyler seemed genuinely committed to building a different kind of life for himself. He was learning actual job skills, managing his own finances, and taking responsibility for his decisions. The change seemed real, but I knew it would take years to determine if it was permanent. As our coffee meeting ended, Tyler stood to leave, then turned back with one final thought. "You know what the really crazy thing is," he said. "If I had just asked you for help instead of trying to steal from you, you probably would have given it to me." He was right. If Tyler had approached me, honestly acknowledged his mistakes, and asked for guidance in building his own legitimate business, I would have helped him. I might not have given him money or a job, but I would have shared knowledge, made introductions, and supported his genuine efforts to succeed. The lawsuit had never been necessary. The identity theft, the harassment, the fraudulent legal claims, none of it had been necessary. My parents could have asked me to mentor Tyler instead of demanding that I subsidize his failures. They could have encouraged him to learn from my example instead of trying to steal my achievements. But they had chosen conflict over collaboration, lies over honesty, and legal warfare over family communication. They had transformed a situation that could have brought us closer together into a battle that permanently tore us apart. My business continued to thrive in the years that followed. By 25, I was running a 7-figure company with offices in 3 states and clients across the country. I spoke at business conferences, mentored young entrepreneurs, and established a scholarship fund for students from dysfunctional families who were trying to build successful careers despite lacking family support. The scholarship fund became one of my most meaningful projects. I received hundreds of applications from young people whose stories reminded me of my own struggles. Kids who were working multiple jobs to pay for college because their parents spent money on siblings' failed ventures. Students who were living in their cars because they refused to enable family members' addictions or irresponsible behavior. Young entrepreneurs who were building businesses while dealing with family members who undermined their efforts out of jealousy or spite. Each scholarship recipient taught me something new about resilience, determination, and the power of refusing to accept other people's limitations as your own. Their success stories validated my belief that family dysfunction doesn't have to determine your future, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior. 5 years after the lawsuit, I received a letter from my mother. She was dying of cancer and wanted to reconcile before it was too late. The letter was filled with regrets, apologies, and admissions that she had been wrong about almost everything. She acknowledged that I had been the responsible son, that Tyler had been enabled rather than helped, and that the lawsuit had been a terrible mistake driven by desperation and poor judgment. I thought about the letter for weeks before responding. Part of me wanted to visit her to have one final conversation where we could both tell the truth about our relationship and our family dynamics. But another part of me recognized that some wounds are too deep to heal and that some relationships are too damaged to repair. In the end, I wrote her a brief letter expressing forgiveness but declining to resume contact. I wished her peace in her final months and told her that I had built a good life despite everything that had happened. I didn't visit her before she died, and I didn't attend her funeral. Those decisions felt cold to some people, but they felt honest and necessary to me. Tyler and I maintained a distant but cordial relationship. We exchanged Christmas cards and occasional text messages about major life events. He eventually married a woman who helped him stay accountable for his choices and supported his genuine efforts to build a stable life. He never became wealthy or professionally successful in a dramatic way, but he learned to support himself honestly and treat other people with respect. For Tyler, that represented genuine growth and achievement. My father lived for 3 more years after my mother's death. He never apologized or acknowledged his role in the family conflict. He died believing that I had been vindictive and cruel for refusing to support Tyler's schemes and defend myself against their lawsuit. I felt sad about his death, but not guilty about the choices I had made. Looking back on everything that happened, I learned that success means more than financial achievement or professional recognition. Real success means building something meaningful while maintaining your integrity. It means refusing to let other people's dysfunction determine your future. It means having the courage to defend what you've built against people who want to tear it down out of jealousy, entitlement, or spite. Most importantly, I learned that you can't force people to respect your boundaries, but you can make it extremely expensive for them to violate those boundaries. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for family members is refuse to enable their worst impulses and hold them accountable for their choices. My parents sued me because they thought I would be too scared, too guilty, or too concerned about family relationships to fight back effectively. They calculated that I would settle the lawsuit to avoid conflict and negative publicity. They were wrong about my character, wrong about my resolve, and wrong about what I was willing to sacrifice to protect what I had built. They thought they were fighting for Tyler's future, but they were actually fighting against the values that had made my success possible: hard work, honesty, accountability, and the refusal to accept unearned benefits at other people's expense. When those values came into conflict with their demands, I chose my values. I won the war because I was fighting for something worth defending. Today, my company employs 37 people across 5 states. We manage digital marketing for over 200 businesses, from small local shops to national restaurant chains. Every client represents a small business owner who took a risk, worked hard, and built something meaningful. Helping them succeed feels like the most important work I could be doing. I still live in Cleveland, in a beautiful house that I bought with money I earned myself. I drive a reliable car that's paid off completely. I have money in the bank, excellent health insurance, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing I don't owe anyone anything. But the real measure of my success isn't financial. It's the knowledge that I built everything I have through honest work, defended it with courage when it was threatened, and helped other people achieve their own success along the way. No one can take that away from me, no matter how hard they try. The lawsuit my parents filed was supposed to destroy me. Instead, it proved that I had built something strong enough to withstand their worst efforts to tear it down. Sometimes the greatest compliment your enemies can give you is trying everything in their power to stop you and failing completely. That's not just success, that's victory. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? How do you think family members should handle conflicts over money and success? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to stay updated on my latest content, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of standing up for yourself even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you navigate your own challenges with courage and clarity. Remember, you have the power to build the life you deserve, regardless of who believes in you or supports your dreams.